Choosing the right food for your chickens can be confusing, and in today's video we're going to go through the most common food types and help you choose the right one for your flock. Welcome to English Country Life. My name's Fiona, and together with my amazing husband Hugh, who's been holding down the fort while I've had a broken leg, thanks love, we run a small holding homestead here in the UK. And for this video, we're going to be taking you through foodstuffs for your chickens, which actually can be very difficult to work out. Now, scientifically formulated feeds, like Marriage's feeds here, who are a UK quality brand, take a lot of the legwork out for you because they've spent a lot of time and research actually making sure it's got the right combination. But still, which one of these should you choose for your groups of chickens? And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So we're going to be looking at laying flocks with a cockerel or cockbird in the flock, and groups where you've got growers plus chicks. And we're going to be looking at supplements to the main feed groups too, because there's grit, there's oyster shell, there's all sorts of additional things. And we're going to give you all that information today. Let's have a look at the most common group of chickens out there, which are laying hens. These are the types of food that laying hens most commonly would eat. There's layers pellets and there's layers mash. And what's the difference? Well, layers pellets are compressed layers mash essentially, and they are pelleted into this wonderful format. Now, these pellets are too big for really young chickens like chicks, but they're great for full-size chickens, full-size hens and full-size bantams. Layers mash is the non-pelleted version, and this is really adaptable, but we would say if you're in a free-range environment outdoors, it's probably not the right food. And this is why. Can you see it blowing away? It's going all over me because it's powdery. You can get around that by making it into a wonderful wet mash. Add warm water and it creates this great aroma that your laying hens will love. Now, you can do that with your pellets too. It just takes a little bit longer for those pellets to absorb the water and expand and create that beautiful mash. And that actually is a really good way of getting nutrition into your chickens, because it doesn't need to be ground up in the gizzard and it actually bypasses that process. Now, you might notice that I've got 4 other bowls on the table, and these are supplements for your laying hens. And the first set are oyster shell, and there's 2 formats we've got here. One is coarse oyster shell and the other is fine oyster shell, and both are appropriate for adult hens that are laying, not a problem at all. And these add extra calcium to their diets. Now, if you're buying a quality brand of food, everything you need is in this food and there's enough calcium there, but every chicken is different, and you might find, for example, I can eat a really fatty breakfast if I want to, but you can't. It's that type of thing. So every chicken is different, and we find that our hens self-regulate. So if they need more oyster shell, they'll eat it. If they don't need it, they won't eat it. It's as simple as that. Now, if you do find your chickens are overindulging in that calcium they need to make good, strong eggs, you'll see calcium deposits on the outside of their eggs. If that's the case, just stop putting the supplement out, because everything you need is in that quality food to begin with. The last 2 bowls we've got on the table for your laying hens are grits, and there is a very fine one which is listed as chick grit, and there's a coarser one which is listed as poultry grit. And what this does, it helps your hens actually grind up their food in the gizzard so they can extract all of that wonderful nutrition in their bodies. Now, once again, if you're buying a quality feed, you don't need to supplement with these, but unlike your oyster shell, you can't overfeed grits because its only purpose isn't for nutrition, it's to grind that food up in the gizzard. So if you want to give this, it's actually not a problem. But if you don't want to spend their money, buy that quality feed because it's already included in these packets. The next group of chickens to have a look at is where you have got a male in the flock. So that's either a young cockerel or a fully grown cockbird. And what we would recommend is a grower's pellets rather than a layer's pellet. And the difference in the two is the amount of calcium, because your cockerel doesn't need a lot of calcium. In fact, if they're overfed calcium in the long run, there's a risk that they could develop kidney issues. But it is a risk. Many people do feed layers pellets when they have a male in the flock, but you do need to be aware of it. Our recommendation is growers. If you're in the US, it's called all flock. Now this has got 1% calcium, whereas the layers pellets from marriages has got just under 4%. So it's a huge percentage difference in the amount of calcium you're seeing in those pellets. And this is what it looks like. It looks exactly like the layers pellets. It's exactly the same size. So perfect for your laying bantams or your large fowl chickens. But what about your laying hens? Because they do need that extra calcium to make really strong, good eggs. And this is where your oyster shell comes in. And you can feed either the coarse oyster shell or the fine oyster shell. The only caveat is please don't mix it in with your food stuff. So don't put it in with your grower's pellets, because you want your laying hens to consume this exclusively. And once again, we find that our laying hens will eat the oyster shell, but actually our large cockbirds and cockerels completely avoid them because they don't need it. Grit is the final thing to talk about with your group where you've got laying hens and a cockerel or cockbird. And we do put both types of grit out. And we find that it will be consumed or it might not be consumed because we're using a brand which has all of that grit in it. But as we've said in the last segment, they can't overeat grit because its entire purpose isn't for nutrition, it's to help grind up those pellets in their gizzards so that all of that good nutrition in the pellets can be extracted. So if they overtake it, it's not a problem. The next group of chickens to have a look at are those where you've got hens who aren't on lay. Now they might be going through that wonderful annual process which is molt, where they go off lay, or they may be too young to actually eat layers pellets. So they don't need all of that calcium that's in the layers pellets to form wonderful hard eggshells. And once again, your growers pellets, or all flock as it's known in the US, are perfect for these chickens. You can still give them grit. So chick grit or poultry grit is wonderful, but the one thing you absolutely should take away are your oyster shells, both your coarse and your fine oyster shell, because they don't need it. They don't need all of that extra calcium, so take that away from them. But these pellets are great for your youngsters or any adults that are off lay. So the last group of chickens to talk about is where you've got youngsters in the flock. So that might be bantams that are less than 10 weeks old or large fowl which are less than 6 weeks old. Now we've got this at the moment. We have got little chicks in the flock, we've got broody hens which aren't laying, we've got laying hens, and we've got an adult cockbird in the mix as well. And everybody is eating chick crumb because the chicks can't consume pellets. And we need to feed to the youngest in the flock essentially. So this works really, really well. Now we're feeding the marriages chick crumb, and please excuse the slit in the bag because we are using this at the moment. Now this includes a medication which is perfect for preventing something called coccidiosis, which is a horrible digestive issue and actually is fairly common in chicks which come out of the egg. So it's a good time to give a medicated chick crumb to us. Many people choose not to, but it's entirely up to you. And if you do feed a medicated food, the only thing to be aware of is it is safe to consume the eggs from any laying hens, but if you're a smallholder or a homesteader processing any of the chickens for meat, you do need a 7-day withdrawal period. So that means not feeding the medicated food for a 7-day period. We've talked about grit as a supplement, and in the case of youngsters, chick grit is the only thing to give them. Just like growers pellets or layers pellets are a choke hazard to them, the large particles in your poultry grit is a problem. But these tiny particles in chick grit will still help them extract all of those wonderful nutrients so they grow up big and strong. But what about oyster shell? Well, your fine oyster shell should be completely removed because these particles are so small your chicks could consume it instead of chick grit. and it's going to add too much calcium to their diet. They just don't need it, and it increases their risk of some health issues going forward because it can cause some kidney issues longer term. But coarse oyster shell, now this is just too big for them to consume. These particles, they can't eat it, but your laying hens can, and they will get all of their extra calcium that they need for those really strong eggs that they're going to lay. So that should be left out. I'm hoping you found that useful and you found the right nutritional balance for your team from the information that we've given you. The foundation stone for any chicken group, we believe, is a formulated feed from a quality brand, and as we say, we trust marriages as part of our feeding regime. And if you have liked this content, take a moment and give us a thumbs up down below. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, come and join us. Hit subscribe and that bell icon and you'll be notified every time a brand new video goes live. If you've got a question for us, pop it in the comment section and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And if there's something you're not sure of, put that in the questions too, and we may even make a video just for you on that subject. But for now, thanks for watching and we look forward to seeing you next time.